Hey folks, this is Michael Voss with the No Soundbites Allowed podcast. I know we've got some background noise in there. I apologize for that. We're going to do everything we can to knock that out. Now we have a couple of guests coming on. Everything got a little hectic here because it is CPAC. We are live and we are having a great time. We're going to have a couple of guests in just a few moments coming on, and we've got it back-to-back guests are scheduled and expected. I know we started about a half hour late, just a little bit of a technology issue. You've got 500 news media, all of us all together at once, and so we're all using the same everything. So it's the bandwidth is out there. So, but I do want to let you know we are paying attention. We are here with you, and we're going to have a great time. You may have already seen some of the coverage. We were covering Representative Jim Jordan earlier this morning, who started off CPAC, had a great time speaking and letting people know what was going on here. We then heard from Deneen Borelli. She had a great speech talking about the U.S. economy and how America is such a unique and great nation, something we don't hear very often at all. But then we went forward and we've gotten some other great speakers throughout the day, and we're going to have some of them on here. I know that Claudia Tenney, the former Congresswoman for the New York 22nd District, is here. I've spoken with her, and she may be on as well either today or tomorrow, having great conversations with her. We're speaking with Representative Laudermilk. He was just here, and we were having some great and very interesting conversations about what happens with Congress and some of the background information that we have that goes on in our nation. But without further ado, I'm going to try and get one of my guests on for you right now, and we're going to have our video and let those two guys know. Yep, those gentlemen. Can you tell those two gentlemen? Come on. And we're going to have them on as well. As I said, I know there's some background noise. We're going to try and clean that up in the video afterwards, but we're going to bring our guests on. We're going to have video going with that as well. It should turn out really well. I hope everyone's going to enjoy it. So we're getting our first guests. They're just walking on up, and we're going to have them on. If you would sit right there, and you can sit there. I'm doing video and audio, and we're going out, and we are live as we speak right now. So, gentlemen, please always keep that in mind. We're also doing a little video, so bear with me 1 second.
Look to see so you have my name.
Perfect. That is the fun of doing everything last minute by yourself. One of my techs had a family emergency, so I had to do all the technology myself, and so it's thrown. So I'm doing everything. So bear with me. Better to have some video than no video. It's not exactly perfect. I apologize for that, but you know what? We want to have everyone on and speak, and I didn't have a chance to get everything set today, so I apologize for that. But with that said, we have with us today Lawrence Zuppan. And Lawrence, you had taken on Senator Sanders out in New Hampshire.
That was Vermont, actually.
Vermont, excuse me.
Yeah, that's right.
What am I saying? It's that day today.
The Northeast, yeah.
And so let me first start off with, who are you? Who is Lawrence Zuppan?
I'm a lifelong lover of the United States of America, and I'm a student of history. I'm a student of politics. I'm a student of government. I'm an MBA, a businessman, and a real estate broker, a father of 3 children, married to my wife for 25 years, and I live in Vermont. And what I saw last year was that Senator Sanders' ideas of socialism were gaining currency among many people, particularly our young people. Of course, it's even gotten worse in the last 3 months. And he was not receiving any serious opposition. So I said, you know something, win, lose, or draw, I'm going to stand up in the arena of ideas, and I'm going to talk about the truth about the exceptionalism of the United States of America, rooted in the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution, which has given rise to the most exceptionally successful free country in the history of the world. And I'm going to put that in opposition to the ideas that Senator Sanders is trying to promulgate.
And that's a large package. That's a lot of things that you're trying to do. Actually, it isn't, because America is great, and so it's pretty. in that respect, it's very simple, but yet it's politics, so we're talking about a lot of things at once. So what is your background?
Oh, my background?
Yeah.
Well, as I said, my educational background is I'm a Master of Business Administration. I've been a businessman all my life. I was the business manager for Peter Max, a real estate developer, a real estate broker. And from a political standpoint, my first run for office was last year against Senator Sanders.
Okay.
But I felt like I'd been preparing for it all my life, intellectually, practically, and in the realm of ideas and experience. So you're right. When I was laying out for you before, I was biting off a really big piece. But let me perhaps boil it down by giving you a little anecdote from the debate itself that I had with Senator Sanders.
Okay.
In that debate, I said to him, Senator Sanders, United States of America, with its creative entrepreneurialism, its freedom, its capitalistic system allowing people to freely engage in commerce, has fed, housed, clothed, with success and prosperity in freedom, more people than any other country in the history of the world.
Absolutely.
Your system, socialism, which you are trying to bring to the fair shores of America, has caused more suffering, want, starvation, death, decline than any other misbegotten system in the history of the world. Now, why, oh why should the American people listen to you about wanting to corrupt what works so beautifully here with your socialism? So he tried to veer towards, well, he didn't have anything to say, so he tried to deflect and accuse. And all he could say was, Mr. Zupan, you sound like your friend Donald Trump. In other words, he couldn't attack the substance of what I said because he doesn't have any real ammunition or live fire to go at what I'm saying. Furthermore, when I went on to say that during that exchange, I talked about how he had championed Hugo Chavez only 2, 3, 4 years ago, and now that the people of Venezuela have taken up the quaint custom of dumpster diving for dinner, he has not talked about Venezuela lately. Cool. And so he tried to veer over to Scandinavia, his favorite fallback. I said, well, I'm glad you brought up Scandinavia, Senator Sanders, and you're trying to talk about it as if they're socialistic countries there. Actually, the Scandinavian countries are bedrock, capitalistic, free market enterprise, private property rights countries that have developed enough resources and success through capitalism in order to expand their welfare state. By the way, in Sweden, if you earn $37,000 a year, you're paying 60% of it in taxes. So please don't tell me about the socialist countries of Scandinavia.
You can understand that. And I imagine that knowing Senator Sanders and the way he's moved, shifting guideposts, so to speak, and picking one socialist nation then another as various developments happen in the nations, I'm not surprised that he did that to you. But let me ask you, on some of the issues that many people are concerned about, let's talk about the Second Amendment in particular.
Right.
It's one of the cornerstones of the nation. Actually, I believe it's the cornerstone of the nation.
Yes.
Because for every other right is based on our ability to defend ourselves, our homes, and to protect ourselves from the government. That's my position, of course, but I would like to hear, what was your position in that? How did you find Senator Sanders' opinion on that?
Well, it's fascinating because Senator Sanders first came into Congress on the strength of opposing a congressman in Vermont who actually touched the third rail of Vermont politics at the time by starting to oppose the Second Amendment. Yeah, and that's how Sanders came on board, isn't it?
Yes, it was a Republican named Peter Smith who endorsed an assault weapons ban. And that created such a backlash to Sanders, who had never won anything besides a mayoral seat up in Burlington, to finally get his statewide win and get into the House.
But now that the political winds have shifted, the hypocrisy has emerged, and he is supporting gun control, so-called, and the abrogation of the Second Amendment.
I want to take a moment because I didn't introduce you, and I apologize. You're the son of Lawrence, and your name is?
Yes, my name's Zachary Zupan. I'm his firstborn son and his campaign manager.
And Zachary, it's always good to have you on as well.
Thank you.
So there's one of the things that I know that's been going throughout the nation. It hasn't come up to Vermont yet, but it is a very big issue, and I'd like to hear your opinion on it. Are you familiar with the red flag legislation?
Red flag legislation, forgive me, I'm not sure I am.
Okay, it hasn't come to New Hampshire yet, but it's already been passed in 8 states throughout the nation. There is legislation facing the Senate and in Congress, the House of Representatives. Matter of fact, there was a bill by Senator Marco Rubio that was passed, was presented last year. Essentially, what this bill does is it allows individuals, either in a household, law enforcement, or others, depending on the bill, to be able to petition a judge directly, goes directly to the courts, and say that you are a danger to yourself and or the community, and because of that danger, the government is then able to go into your home and take your firearms. As a direct consequence of that, they also will be able to take your children. The verification of this is that if you have bought a steak knife, a hammer, any dangerous implement is the language of the bill, then they are able to justify this.
And there's no due process.
You are not notified until the day that the police knock on your door.
So you have no way to defend yourself against the charges.
No. And in Florida, as an example, they passed it in March. In between April and June of last year, 2018, 450 individuals suffered this indignity and had to then go to the courts and petition to get their property back without having committing a crime.
Well, actually, we did have a similar event in Vermont.
Right.
Yeah. Also signed into law by Governor Scott, incidentally.
Who ostensibly, or at least by registration, is a Republican, yet he seems to be favoring gun control in Vermont right now. So we had a case where the uncle of a young boy who was suspected of having some violent ideas, his uncle's firearms, because he potentially had access to them, his uncle's firearms were confiscated. And his uncle had no due process, no right to protect himself, no right to retain his property because of the allegations without due process against his nephew. So, yes, we have had something like that.
And that was then used as an excuse to pass some sweeping new gun control laws that ruined Vermont's previous status as the gold standard for firearm liberty in the country.
Which we used to be.
Exactly. We were the standard of freedom on the Second Amendment and one of the standards by it. So that's why I was very concerned about this case. And and I apologize, I haven't followed Vermont on this and exactly where Senator Sanders has come down. So you're against the red flag legislation as I've described it.
Yes,
I understand
absolutely.
It's not exactly
I'm against any
saying.
infringement on the Second Amendment rights of American citizens. So Senator Sanders has taken the politically useful position, as he construes it, to be against Second Amendment sanctity and supporting gun control measures under the guise of protecting people, which is ironic because it's actually the Second Amendment that gives people the power, as you pointed out, to protect themselves.
Absolutely. Let's ask I know we don't have a lot of time today. I do thank you for stopping by to introduce yourself and to all of my listeners. Let me also ask you, in reference to the economy, obviously it's a very big issue. It's affecting everyone in the nation. And looking at it from Vermont, looking at the proposals of increasing taxes, we've heard that from Nancy Pelosi, we've heard that from Charles Schumer last year. In fact, in March of 2018, we hear from Senator Sanders that he's looking to have free college and, well, free everything, except for Medicaid for all, would cost estimated about $32 trillion.
Right.
Where do you stand on these issues, free college, Medicare for all, that direction?
I'm glad you asked. You know, a little while ago I wrote an op-ed, and some of your listeners may be old enough to remember the Beatles song, Taxman. If you try to drive, I'll tax the street. If you try to walk, I'll tax your feet. Taxman. That seems to be the pathological obsession that the Democrat Party has. If they see it move, they tax it. So now, I'm a student of of the economy. I'm a student of what works. I'm a master of business administration and a businessman. And what I've found and seen over the years is that the money that's used most effectively is the money that's spent and used by the people who actually earn it. And the further that money moves away from the people who produce that value, the more promiscuously and wastefully and recklessly that money gets spent, which is a definition of what we have in Washington, D.C. right now. So, I'm in favor of reducing taxes, reducing spending simultaneously, keeping the power of the purse closest to the people who earned it. If it's not them, it's their local taxing authority, which answers more directly to them and has to face them face to face. The people who, from hundreds and thousands of miles away, make legislation and never have to remember that they're dealing with real flesh and blood people will be all that more wanton in their taxation policies. So, reducing taxation, giving the liberty, which includes keeping what you earn, which is one of the definitions of liberty, in the hands of the American people, has always been what's given us the prosperity and the greatness, and will restore the prosperity and greatness as it's starting to do once again.
Now, let me ask you, obviously the first time any candidate runs, and I've run myself for Congress in the New York 22nd District, so I'm very familiar with this. The first time is a learning experience for everyone.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. What would you say is one of the biggest things that you learned on the campaign trail in the last run?
One of the biggest things that I've learned is somewhat prosaic. Start early and let everybody know that if they support what you're doing, they need to support you financially. Because time and money need to be on your side, not against you. Now, those are two prosaic elements to answer your question. But of course, the most important thing is to have the power and the strength of your own convictions behind why you're even running in the first place, so that you can communicate them not only with a good brain, but from your heart out your mouth, so that you touch people where they live. If you have that, along with an early start and financial support, you can prevail.
Let me ask you, and I know many of my younger viewers, the younger generation overall, obviously have been looking towards the socialism, the democratic socialists of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or Mr. Sanders himself, introducing it to them. And there's been a lot of attention given to that, especially in Vermont. So let me ask you, how have you been addressing that? I imagine you've been asked about that.
I'm so glad you asked, because in the debate with Senator Sanders, I got to ask him a question. And I said, Senator Sanders, now that you're a millionaire, I know that there are thousands of young Vermonters all around us who would love to know the blueprint that you established for becoming so entrepreneurially successful. Now,
Becoming a millionaire.
Becoming a millionaire. Keep in mind, I'm talking to the self-avowed socialist.
Of course.
So without any sense of irony, he proceeded to talk about the book that he wrote, and he started to hawk his book like it was an infomercial in our debate. And the irony was completely lost on him.
On public television.
This was on NPR's affiliate, VPR in Vermont. I think the irony was completely lost on him that I had the socialist millionaire talking about how to build wealth, even though, in response to his opponent's question, you can't make this stuff up.
No, it's a very interesting thing. I definitely would like to see that video of that debate, or even audio.
We'll send it to you.
I would love to see that, because that's a very interesting thing. I don't think a lot of people have really touched on the fact that Senator Sanders is now a multi-millionaire. He is three homes, and he's
one up in
not
Grand
redistributing that, which he's talking about for everyone else. Let me be fair, though. Let me also ask, are you a millionaire?
I'm not a millionaire, but I don't envy other millionaires. I try to learn from what they've done successfully, and I try to learn from other millionaires, because they have produced something, goods and services of value, to the extent where they've been rewarded with good and great wealth. That's the bedrock of success. So we need to learn from millionaires, not envy them, put them down, or tax them into another country.
Well, that is the American dream, isn't it? That we're all supposed to be able to have our homes, and we're able to have our cars, and be able to live our lives with some measure of comfort, if not for us directly, our children thereafter. I mean, that is what we're supposed to be doing. Why are we upset with someone? I always ask, why are we upset about someone who's done that already?
We should be standing on the sidelines applauding and learning from them. Applauding their success and learning how they did it, and then going out and doing it ourselves.
Let me ask you, how have you been received? I know first-time candidates, often in my program actually, we love to talk to first-time candidates and people who've just gone into races because I think it's important that real people get involved and take politics back from those who've been there historically a long period of time, 10, 20 years and so forth. Do you believe in term limits?
I do believe in term limits. I believe that an appropriate term limit will probably be 3 for the House, 3 terms for the House, and 2 for the Senate.
Okay. So you're looking at 12 and actually 12 years.
12 years and
12 and 6.
12 years.
12 in the Senate, 6 in the House.
And would you stand by that for yourself if
I
you were
would.
to be elected?
I would.
Okay, so you're willing to limit yourself to just 3 terms, 2 terms in the Senate if you were to be elected from day one.
Yeah, although I must admit to you right now, it wouldn't be that heroic because by that time I'd be in my 80s anyway. But yeah.
In your 80s?
Yeah.
You don't seem that old.
Thank you. Thank you. But yeah, I would stand by it. I would walk the walk as well as talk the talk.
Well, that's an important thing because we hear many people who don't and aren't even willing to say on camera or to the public that they're willing to have those time limits. So that's always an important thing.
Yeah.
I know we're running short. We've got about 4 more minutes.
Okay.
We've covered a couple of different things in the election. Let me ask you, what is the support you're getting? Is it mostly from Republicans, conservatives, older generation, younger generation? How is your voice being received right now?
Well, so far it's been mostly the Republicans that have responded to my message, and a little bit those who are somewhat right of center. But the common sense ideas that I have are reaching out and touching people, including independents and some Democrats. But now that the election against Senator Sanders is over, right now I'm not running for anything. What I'm running for is to reinvigorate the awareness and the education of the basic principles of what made America exceptional, wonderful, and great, and how to keep those alive. In fact, what I do is I go around to schools and civic organizations around the state, and I do a little seminar called Brush Fires of Freedom. And that's, I borrowed freely from Samuel Adams' famous quotation where he said, "In order to prevail, we do not need a majority, but only an irate and tireless minority willing to set brush fires of freedom in the hearts and minds of their countrymen." So consider me Johnny Applefire because I'm going around, that's what I'm going around doing.
Okay. For those who are interested in learning more, I know we haven't, and I apologize, I wasn't familiar with your race, so I couldn't go in proper depth, and I apologize for that. But let me ask, for those who are interested, the website, I believe, and I want to make sure, is the ZUPAN, that's Z as in Zulu, U as in uniform, P as in Papa, A as in Alpha, N as in November, for Vermont.com. Is that correct? All right. And do you have any upcoming events where someone may be able to see you or that they'll be able to hear more from you directly?
They could write to us. They could write to me or Zachary at either Zachary at, what's our new email address?
So it would be Zachary at ZUPANforvermont.com or Lawrence at ZUPANforvermont.com.
And we'd be happy.
Okay.
And we'd be happy to fill them in on what's going on and how they could be in touch with us and what we're doing.
I'm very interested in this, and I do want to follow this a little bit more, especially with the 2020 race. And obviously, Mr. Sanders has already mentioned that he's looking to run for president, which I don't think will happen based on the gender and identity politics we see the Democratic Party leaning towards. But I think it's even more important to know what's going to be happening in Vermont and how he's speaking.
Well, you know, he basically takes Vermont for granted and goes around the rest of the country because he has been so electorally successful there. But I think that with all of the people who want the nomination in the Democrat Party jostling themselves with pointy elbows to move further to the left of Bernie Sanders, and each one coming up with a new extreme giveaway program each week, that socialism is the poison for which we need to teach the antidote, which is constitutional free market entrepreneurial capitalism. And I'm not talking about capitalism of the top 100 corporations. I'm talking about everything from the guy who's got a great idea in his garage, the Steve Jobs, the Paul Allens, of the world who have built something from scratch because they had a unique genius idea. This is happening every day. In the last 10 years, how many corporations that are on NASDAQ and didn't even exist a few years ago because of the inventive genius and the power of supercomputing. So I want to promulgate that we have an opportunity economy, that everyone who's starting out in life can look forward to greatness if they pick an idea, apply themselves, and commit to their own success. There's no better place in the world to do it than the United States of America.
I agree completely. I do. I do want to thank you. I want to stay in touch. Please let me know what's going on and keep me aware of there's a lot of races I try and follow in Colorado, New York, my own home state, where there's a couple of crazies, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez being one of them. But I do want to follow what's going on in Vermont. I'm very interested. One quick question on Green New Deal.
Right.
For it, against it?
Well, I mean, it's almost a question that answers itself.
Of course, but you gotta ask.
But you have to. The Green New Deal is the epitome of neo-Marxist lunacy coming out of the mouth of someone who never really has any experience of any depth of intellect and life, that just is plucking these ideas, smashing them together, and then these supposedly more mature veteran senators are getting behind it because they're embarrassed to say she's crazy. $93 trillion. Look, here's a problem. We have a $22 trillion deficit already, which is threatening the acceptability of the United States dollars for future months, years, and generations. We need to pare back that deficit. We need to pare back the $1 trillion a year deficit spending, not multiply it with harebrained ideas based on socialist nostrums, socialist ridiculousness.
I have to say, I feel bad for reasonable environmentalists with free market solutions who are now, they're getting sidelined because Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal is monopolizing all the talk of any sort of environmental policy.
We are talking about that a lot these days, and hopefully we're going to move past this because I don't see this as being a very functional law, but we'll get there.
Yeah,
we'll definitely get there, and with you helping in Vermont and others in Colorado and New York and many other places I've been speaking to, we're going to get there. I like to believe that. But gentlemen, what I would like to do is we're going to look forward to try and follow up with you after CPAC, maybe in a month or two. Let's see where we are and let's see how we can help each other to spread the word and talk more about this and get some more details out there for everyone.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
I thank you both for coming on now.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Is this your card here?
No, my cards got lost on the transit down here. It's just, you always go into a trip and you always say to yourself, oh, do I have everything? There's always something you forget.
Okay.
My tech guy, he didn't come, so I don't have my cards.
Michael Vasquez of MV Consulting. Okay.
You can find us on, those are all my companies.
Okay.
So the easiest one is just the No Soundbites Allowed podcast, where you'll see a lot of my information right there.
Thanks for making time for us.
Most definitely. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, everyone, and I want you to remember that was Zachary Zupan, who's just joined us. Great conversation out of Vermont. And obviously, there we go. Technology glitch there. So we just had a great conversation with Zachary Zupan talking about Vermont, the Senate race for 2018, obviously looking for 2020, looking to take on Senator Sanders, who's himself looking to go for the presidency. And so obviously that's a critical race where we're going to see a lot of information happening. I hope everyone's able to hear that very clearly. We're obviously going to be going out and trying to clean up the sound afterwards, but these are the kinds of things that are important and why we come down to CPAC, why we're at the Conservative Political Action Conference, to let you know about people throughout the nation who are standing up for the issues that are important to America, standing up for the Second Amendment, they're standing up for lower taxes, for more freedom, for more individual choice, to be able to combat these ideas of socialism that we see, whether it's the, quote, democratic socialists of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or it's Bernie Sanders with his version of socialism, or what it is in fact, communism. Because that's where it always leads. We see that in Venezuela, we see that in North Korea, we see that in China, we see that in the former Russia, Soviet Union. We've seen this every time. The path always goes to the same place. Whether it happens very quickly, like we saw in Venezuela, if it starts off there, like North Korea, it always winds up going to the same place with death and destruction combined. And so we're going to see how this is going to move forward, and this is an important time. Now, I do know we're going to have, our next guest is expected is Brian Maloney. I don't see him here. He's expected to be on at 4 o'clock. He should be here any moment. But we're going to keep moving forward. We're going to keep on having a conversation. And I do see a couple of individuals. I want to have them on in a second. CPAC has been a fantastic event. I have to tell you, people, I've been running since 5 o'clock this morning. We are having a great time talking with so many people from around the nation who are concerned about our future. They are concerned about our government. They are concerned about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, even Nancy Pelosi and her movement, because even though we've been talking so much in the news about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Green New Deal, the socialism aspect, we're losing sight of the other side. In one moment. Yes, Jeff. 4:30, right? We're still on? Yes.
Okay, let me see.
And hold on, folks. We're just double checking to make sure our 4:30 with Eric Karen is going to be perfectly fine. I believe he is. I saw him here earlier. You're really going to enjoy this. A former special agent for the United States, a diplomat, and he has a book out. I think you're going to find it very interesting. And he has a unique insight in the world. So we're just going to double check and make sure that he's still on time and everything is set there. 34. That's right, folks. And in case you're wondering, you want to come down, we're down at booth 34. We're going to be each day, today, tomorrow, 3 to 5, Saturday, 1 to 3. And everything looks good for our 4:30. I'm waiting for our 4 o'clock to show up, and we'll keep moving forward. But as I was saying, so many people who are so concerned, and so many people who have been down here speaking. I was talking to David Webb. You may have seen him on Fox News. Hopefully we'll have him on tomorrow, talking about how important this is, how vital it is for you to be involved and to know what's going on and to hear the different voices that are out there. Every one of us trying to make sure that you're educated and not lost in the media hype. And as I was saying about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she may have that media focus right now, but the reality is we always have to watch out for Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, who's guiding and directing the legislation that is actually going to be voted on. And she's able to do so much more because no one's paying attention. One of the big things we have to watch out for, and a lot of people have been talking about here, is the Second Amendment. We've been talking about what's happening with the red flag legislation that's been proposed in the Senate, and that's also going into the House, and how that will affect you. And a lot of people who have, if you haven't seen me before, I've been talking about this after 8 months of research. This has never been able to protect people from mass shootings. It has never protected people from suicides. That's not me saying that. That's Duke University, and they did a report on the effectiveness in Connecticut and Indiana, where we've seen the red flag laws out for the longest period of time and been least effective. And we're not going to see that get better in New York State or anywhere else in the nation, quite honestly. I wanted to speak a little bit about Deneen Borelli. She was speaking today about the economic independence that we have in this nation, and that's a critical factor, to be able to be financially independent of the United States government. I mean, a lot of people may have forgotten that in December, Senator Kamala Harris came out and she decided to say that she wants to pay $250 per month to people who are poor. Basically, she wants to pay people $600 a year to be able to be poor. Obviously, this is an idea that no one here agrees with. We've seen some of the greatest successes. Dr. Ben Carson, who I'll have his photo out a little bit later tonight when I'm doing some of the edits, and I'll have some photos from him, and hopefully we'll be able to speak with him. The man has become a success because of his efforts and his works, and become the world's leading brain surgeon. You don't get this because of a socialist system. You get this because of independence. Independence motivated by the freedom of choice, the freedom of economics. These are the things that move us forward, and we need to emphasize that so much, especially in the black community. And, excuse me, just so many people walking around. We also saw here today Silk and Diamond have been at the event today going around. They were talking to many people. We weren't able to get them onto the program, but they were talking about the importance of the freedom of the First Amendment, to be able to speak and get our voices out there on formats like Facebook and Google and Twitter, who have admitted that they are silencing the voices of conservatives, who have been known to silence and suppress the information coming out of CPAC each time, every year, and even this time, and making it harder for people to see exactly what's going on, to know how this nation is being affected, and that you have alternatives that are out there. Alternatives like those provided by Representative Jim Jordan, by Janine Borelli, by so many of them. Dr. Neil Gorka, who also spoke here today. A great conversation was had speaking with retired Colonel Oliver North, who is the president of the NRA, speaking today very specifically about protecting our Second Amendment and the challenges that are coming out there we see with this new administration. We're just seeing some incredible people speaking about deep concerns for our nation. And we're going to see more coverage of that tomorrow. As I go through, we're going to be in the general halls. We're going to go into the breakout sessions, trying to cover more of that to be able to provide you more of that information. And some of that will be streamed live, some of that will be taped, and we'll be providing it afterwards. And I believe, just checking on my people, so now it's 4:06. I tell you, my adrenaline's up high. It's just so many people, so many great individuals. Some of them big names, some of them small names. I do want to mention, by the way, I want to say hello to all of my listeners over at the Belmar Pub in New York, in Binghamton, New York. If you happen to be going through Binghamton, please drop on by. Great place. They've been great supporters of ours, and we do want to shout out to them and say hello and let people know that they can speak with them and drop in for some great food, good drinks, great place, and I do want to thank them for their support. I also want to mention WUTQ up in Utica, talk radio. Great program, wonderful example of freedom, the ability to get on air, to have different voices speaking, supporters of conservatism, and, well, just everything. And bear with me 1 second, folks. Hello, this is Michael. Yes. We're 34. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Okay, and that was just Brian Maloney calling in, letting us know that he's going to be here. He's just finding our seat. We're in booth 34. There are a lot of media here, over 500 individuals, and so a little hard to find us sometimes, but he's on his way right this moment. We're looking forward to having him on. And Brian has he's a great conservative, great message for us all. I'm looking forward to seeing him here. And I'm hoping everyone's enjoying this. This is 34.
It's so hard to find things.
I know.
Brian Maloney, how you doing?
Hi,
Nice
Brian.
to meet you.
And by the way, we are live as we speak. Please go ahead and sit down.
Okay.
Yes, we are. And there's one of our cameras. I just want you to move over just a little bit. I want you, because I have two cameras going here.
Okay. Oh,
So bear with me.
this is amazing.
And there you are, perfectly centered. Actually, perfect. And don't mind this. I've got like 3 mics going here, so perfect. And I do thank you for joining us here today. And just to properly introduce you, this is Brian Maloney with Red Wave America PAC, Political Action Committee. And before we do anything else, I know you're a co-founder of that, but before we say anything else, let's start off with, who is Brian Maloney?
Well, I'm a longtime political activist. I grew up in a far-left environment in California, and I got sick of it at a really young age, and I just completely kind of rebelled against all of it. I've been working in the conservative movement for about 25 years. I was a radio talk show host for 15 years. I've made a lot of appearances on Fox News Channel, on Hannity and Laura Ingraham and O'Reilly when that was on. So I've been in the movement a long time. And the biggest thing we have going right now is something on Facebook called Stop the Scalping. So I know it has a weird name, but it is like an anti-censorship group made up of conservatives on Facebook. And we have 100,000 members there. And so would love for your viewers to check it out at Stop the Scalpings on Facebook. And on for Red Wave America, just type in @Red Wave America and you find our group there. So we've got a lot of things going on social media.
And social media is one of the big avenues right now. Obviously, it's sweeping the nation. Podcasts, that's the next generation. So it sounds like you're reaching out to the younger generation to tell them, is it because of the move of socialism, or is there another message or another idea?
Well, we have to bring in younger people. We just have to. And we're up against kind of insurmountable odds because young people are being taught, I mean, in the schools, that socialism is the answer. That socialism, would have worked in Cuba and the Soviet Union if it had ever been properly implemented. The lies that our children are being fed every single day are just breathtaking, and they're absurd. But so trying to counter that, I mean, we're at an enormous disadvantage. I mean, we really are. I mean, they have the institutions behind them, and we're just trying to get in there with an argument anywhere we can.
That is important, and I know that we see the media overall, not even especially on social media, but the media in general is taking such a favorable view of the socialism, of the Ocasio-Cortez, the Bernie Sanders, the appeal of free stuff. And I think that's one of the big issues that we have to address. And I hear that here in CPAC, we've been hearing many of the speakers talking about that. How does Red Wave America, the PAC, how do you target that? How does your online presence, how are you looking to address it?
Well, what we're trying to do is we're trying to take this part of political activism, the PAC, the fundraising, that aspect, out of Washington and into the mainstream grassroots of America. So conservatives all over the country, instead of having people in Washington make these decisions who are party establishment types who don't put the money in the right places, we're trying to get out there, and our messages are different too. Our messages are more ones that resonate with, we think, the average person, because we just think that the swamp itself is very, very out of touch. So we're trying to do things differently with a fresh approach. We only launched Red Wave America last year, and kind of put our feet in the water with some races. We were active in Texas with some billboard campaign going against Beto O'Rourke. We were active in Florida, so we've just been doing, but this next election, we're going to go full throttle here. We're going to go all the way, and so that's what we're gearing up, because look, we can't afford to lose this election. And I know everybody says that every time. If we lose this one, I don't know when we ever get it back. I don't know that we do, because the left has been so good at fundamentally changing the structure so that they win all the elections. I mean, look what they've done in California, going door to door to collect your ballot, knocking on your door 5 days in a row until you give them your ballot, collecting massive numbers of ballots, and then some person is dropping them off. We don't know what's going on with them. So we have that kind of stuff going on. How do we counter that? And our party, the Republican Party, is doing very, very little to fight any. We're not seeing much from the party in response. We're seeing the usual asleep at the wheel kind of attitude they've had for years. So there's so many problems to overcome in such a short period of time. The odds are not really in our favor that much. So.
Well, I can understand. There's a lot of criticism that can be made out there, absolutely, and not many people are willing to say it.
Right.
So I do find that interesting. Let me ask you, in reference to looking at 2020, what states are you looking to go towards to focus, and what particular issues specifically are you looking to tackle?
Well, we have been very active on the immigration issue, but now the surprise issue is abortion. I don't think we ever would have been in that realm at all. I don't think that would have even been on our list, but the Democrats have put that issue back on the front burner and on the agenda through stupidity on their part. And if we do win the next election, it'll be largely because the Democrats just blew it. The extremism we've seen from the Democrats so far in this congressional term has been just amazing to me. the infighting that's going on. But the abortion issue, I think they were foolish. The Democrats were foolish to stir everyone up on abortion.
I'm from New York State, upstate New York, and I can tell you how the backlash in New York State was immediate, and it was impressive how many people, both Republicans, conservatives, libertarians, and even some of the Democrats, were completely dumbfounded that they moved that abortion to the late term, and we're hearing down in the Carolinas how they're looking to even go post birth. I mean, how can you believe that?
At this point, it's just impossible to imagine. But their real agenda is coming out now, and it's an even more extreme agenda than any of us knew, even those of us who follow the left every single day. It turned out they were even wackier than we knew they were, and we study them. And I just, and to be from New York State, I mean, Andrew Cuomo, is a disgrace to the entire nation. I mean, how New York can stand, I don't care, even if you are a Democrat, how anyone can stand him. I mean, he is insufferable. He is impossible.
Everyone knows him well. There is a large consensus of thought that he is corrupt and just has avoided. I mean, everyone circling around him has been pretty much convicted of that. So those are one of the intrinsic problems. And I focus on New York because we see California, New York, they basically are the social test grounds.
Right.
And then we see it go from there out to the rest of the nation.
Yeah.
So in that regard, let me ask you, you mentioned immigration, and I do want to get to that. And
sure.
I know you're from New York.
I'm from Massachusetts, actually, at this point,
Okay.
Even worse. Well, actually, the funny thing is Massachusetts has a Republican governor. He's a liberal Republican, but I'd rather have
such a thing exists.
Well, somewhat. He's a moderate to liberal Republican.
Right.
I'd rather have that than Andrew Cuomo any day of the week.
I agree with
and a lot of conservatives would disagree with me. They'd say, "But you need a real conservative, but you're never going to get one in Massachusetts." So if you got a moderate who holds the line on left-wing extremism for 4 years or 8 years, that's as good as you're going to get in a deep blue state. That's as good as it gets.
The deep blue states are the difficult ones.
Yeah.
And that's where we have. And you're right. Massachusetts is one of the fights that we definitely have to have.
Yeah.
And I do want. Immigration takes a little time, so I want to. Before I get to that, I want to talk. Are you familiar with the red flag legislation? I'm a massive advocate for the Second Amendment, so I always like to bring this up, and I know it's something that is spreading throughout the nation.
Right.
And as I recall, Massachusetts did pass the red flag legislation before New York. New York just passed it. You had passed it earlier. How have you felt about that? What is your thoughts?
It's not a state where you had a lot of rights to begin with, and it seems in terms of the Second Amendment, it seems more up to the individual sheriffs in the counties, and now it seems like it's been more of a regional kind of thing depending on where in the state you live. And, Massachusetts, it's funny because you talk about New York, how different upstate is from New York City. It's the same thing in Massachusetts. I'm in southeast Massachusetts, and it's really not that liberal there. It's country music, it's pickup trucks, it's cranberry bogs. It's not Harvard, it's not Cambridge. Exactly. It couldn't be more different. Even in New England, even in the Northeast, even in New York, you get outside of the cities, and it still looks a lot like America. And that is an America where people want to have their Second Amendment rights, where they want to be able to do this. And, but you've got people in Boston and Albany who are going to do whatever they can to take away their rights as much as possible. So, that war continues, but in a state like Massachusetts, there's not much you can do because you don't have anyone you can really go to. There's not much of a Republican presence in the legislature. Just a few, just a handful.
Especially now in New York, it's a single-party, very liberal Democratic base, which is incredible, and thus we get the abortion laws.
Yeah. So at that point, all you're relying on are federal decisions, federal court decisions, the Supreme Court. That's your only protection. You don't have it at the state level. And the only other protection, I guess, you have, like I said, would be the individual policies of the county sheriffs in the particular one that you live in.
I know that for New York, a lot of the sheriffs have, Western New York in particular, have come out and they've been sanctuary areas for the Second Amendment and for a more conservative view, regardless of the governors and the legislation of the states coming out and saying, no, we have to take away their Second Amendment rights.
Yeah.
Has that been the experience that you've seen in Massachusetts?
I think it's pretty similar. I think within the Northeast it doesn't vary that much. So
that is that's what I've heard. It's very consistent for most of the states.
I think so.
On the individual, local level, as opposed to what we're hearing from state legislatures.
Absolutely.
And that's a disconnect, a massive disconnect, and I think that needs to be addressed more and brought up.
Right.
Let me ask you, let's go to immigration, and let's talk, because that's one of the big things that your organization is working on. And looking at immigration, obviously we've seen a lot of emphasis on open borders, whether it's de facto open borders because we're not building a wall, or the fact that they're looking to just open up our take down the walls, in fact.
Exactly. Take down the ones that are there. Beto O'Rourke, take down the walls that are already there.
Yeah.
Now that is, that like abortion, it's like the left, the Democrats have come out with, they're pandering to their fringe extremes, and they've made that their mainstream viewpoint now. It's like, wait a second, I've never heard Democrats say before, tear down existing walls. That's new. So the fact that they're pandering to that extreme element, they're handing us, like I said, if we win next year, it's going to be because they handed us everything by being wacko. Because I think if they wanted to win an election next year, I think they would say, we've already got protections on the border, leave it alone. But instead, it's tear down the walls, abolish ICE detention centers, abolish the private companies that are running some of the private detention centers, a couple in particular, remove them from the equation as well. And the fact is they're doing a better job than the federal government can do any day of the week. So there's so many aspects of this, but I think that, if you were a moderate party trying to win, because there's that moderate, there's that independent group in the middle in any election that you need, the suburban voters. Like the Democrats are ceding all of those potentially to us by taking these extreme positions. So they'll be as popular as ever on the college campus, but in the suburbs where people live, work, and swing one way or the other, one party or the other, you're kind of sabotaging yourself, and you're making it easier for us.
I hope so.
I hope so too. The bottom line about next year is that a lot of it depends on how popular Trump is next November. And that is how.
That's the honest viewpoint. If the economy's doing well, if we've got movement with North Korea, where he's coming back, and the last report I heard is things were going very well with that.
Right.
Obviously, these things will help give us more momentum.
They will, and conversely, if there's some horrible thing that's happened between now and then, it'll hurt us. But I think that they've immunized Trump on so many issues by just complaining too much, whining too much. And this kind of circus we had yesterday with Michael Cohen, which doesn't help them at all. It just the whole thing was
he's convicted of lying. How
right.
Can you believe him?
When were you lying, then or now? That's like law school 101 right there. So were you lying that day or are you lying today? Why should we trust you when you're already convicted of lying? Now you say you're telling the truth. I mean, it's just
how could we ever know?
You're done. You're done. I mean, that your credibility's gone right there. So the whole thing was a farce. It really was.
Now, looking at the PAC, and I do want to get back to the scalpel, and I want to bring that up again. By the way, the website again is.
So we have MediaEqualizer.com is one of our sites. If you're on Facebook, check out Red Wave America. Just type in @Red Wave America, and you'll go to our page. And then the big group we have on Facebook is called Stop the Scalpings. One word, Stop the Scalpings. 100,000 members there.
I was thinking scalpel for some reason.
Scalpings. I know it's a weird name. There's a reason for the weird name that goes back to our beginnings. Because the first thing people say is, why do you have a weird name like that? There's a good reason for it. And that is just that the left has a habit, and this is their own terminology, of collecting conservative scalps. So they're trying to kick conservatives off the airwaves, scalping conservatives. And they scalped Bill O'Reilly one day. They almost had Sean Hannity. They've gone after Tucker Carlson. I mean, they've harassed him at his home with his family and children. With children.
That was crazy.
Yeah. So that's what we're dedicated to fighting back against at Stop the Scalpings. And that's why it has that funny name. It has a real purpose. And and a name like that drives the left nuts. So
a little bit of a bonus there.
Which is why our other group is called the Media Equality Project, because that drives the left nuts too, because that sounds like the kind of group they would have. So it's just the kind of name they would use.
Always.
So it's always fun to poke them, here and there, just for kicks, because they are obnoxious. So.
Brian, I know we're running out of time. We've got about 6 minutes or so.
Sure. Okay.
Let me ask you, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the PAC.
Yeah.
And ask about, obviously PACs are very much driven by how much money they are able to accumulate and to redistribute to the various candidates. So let me ask you, how did you do, I know it's your first year, how did the PAC do in getting that, and how do you look in the near term to be able to address more and more candidates?
Well, what we're doing is, another way we're swamp free is keeping overhead extremely low. Because when you give money to a PAC or a super PAC that's based in Washington, you're paying for the office rent, for the suite they have on K Street or whatever. The rent is an enormous expense. They have extremely high overhead, so very little money actually goes to the candidates. So we're running this on a shoestring and making sure as much money gets to the people as possible so that they can maximize, so that our ad buys on their behalf are maximized. That's the point. We're not actually giving money to candidates, but we're spending on their behalf independently without their knowledge or consultations. So we're a super PAC.
Separate.
Want to make that? Yeah, I don't want to be confusing about that because the law is very clear.
I know, and that's why I want to give you the opportunity to address it, because I know people get confused sometimes.
Well, you know what? It's easy to, it's incredibly complicated maneuvering all of it. The FEC is not fun to deal with at all, and they would love to nail some conservative scalps. They would. Yes. I mean, the left still runs Washington. I mean, it isn't really changed that much. There's not only so much Trump could do.
True. Especially in such a short amount of time.
Right.
Still in his first term.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people miss that we're still in the first term and look at so many things that are, if not done in motion, that we've heard about for the last 20 years.
Yeah, and he doesn't get that much help from the Republicans, and he really doesn't on a lot of this stuff. The Republicans in Congress, they don't really stand by him when he's trying to clean house. I mean, they're protecting their friends or whatever. So we've got problems, that we need to deal with in a lot of places.
How much, in terms of the Republican Party, as well as the Conservative Party, maybe even the Libertarian Party, how much are you getting resistance there? Are they embracing the efforts that you're doing?
Well, I think that they are entirely independent of our efforts, and I don't think they would be supportive, because what we're doing is fundamentally turning away from their establishment and their leadership. I think the GOP absolutely needs new, fresh blood at the top. The same people have been running the show, same establishment figures. Now you have a Mitt Romney as senator. It's like that's his crowd. That's his crowd that runs the RNC. Yeah, and those people are never about making our lives better. That crowd is always about protecting themselves and their own interests. So the grassroots conservative Republican out there isn't really being represented, except maybe by certain representatives, members of Congress here and there, but not by the party leadership at all. So fundamentally, what we have to do over time is change that, because if we don't even have our own side figured out, how can we ever expect to beat them?
That's true. We always have to have our house in order,
right,
to be able to bring that order to others. I agree with that. Let me ask you, and I know we're just about done, but I do want to get this. If you could pick, obviously you believe in term limits. From what I'm hearing from what you're saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah.
Would you say you support the term limits?
Well, I'm thinking more the party leaders themselves, the people running the party. I don't know if term limits is the answer. It might be in terms of elected representatives, maybe. It's something worth considering, but ultimately, it's about cleaning house at the RNC, but it's also about getting, I think people like, McConnell probably need to move on. I mean, and I'm not completely against him, but I don't know that he's the right person anymore in the Senate. I think we need a fresh face there. We got rid of some of the people we had in the House, but unfortunately we lost the House on top of it, so that didn't really do us any good. But getting rid of Paul Ryan, in my view, was a fabulous thing. because I think that he was in the way of us ever getting anything done. And that's why the wall wasn't funded in the first 2 years of the Trump presidency when Republicans had control of everything. Why did not any of that stuff happen? Paul Ryan, you know? I mean, Paul was there to stop things from happening. So, you know, with friends like that, who needs enemies?
So I've got about a minute.
Sure.
And I want to finish up. Let me ask, are there any races, any states that people should look for to see your organizations moving on? Are there any events that you would say next month or two someone can look for and be able to target?
Oh, we're not quite at that point yet, but we're definitely going to be looking at the major swing states. I hope we're not in a position where we have to try to hang on to red states like Texas again, because that was not a fun place to be. So we're still formulating that, but there are 2 special elections coming up in North Carolina for 2 House seats, and so we would like to be involved in those because those are 2 special circumstances. But so we see North Carolina coming up as we really need those 2 seats. So so we'll definitely be getting involved with that.
Then people can definitely look to see how that goes and what your involvement is, and be able to contact you. Obviously, you've mentioned the sites, and I'll be posting that as well. But I want to thank you for the time today to be able to introduce yourself and let us know about your organizations. I thank you for the conversation. It's really great
Thank
to hear
you.
your thoughts.
Really appreciate it. Thanks. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Are you still live? Or?
Oh yeah, I'm still alive because I'm still going straight
Oh,
out.
that's amazing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And as I said, we're still live, and we're going straight into our next meeting. This is our last conversation of the day for today, but we'll probably be doing some breakout meetings and some other things, some taped events rather than the live presentation. But today I get to have as my final guest on the program while we're live, none other than Eric Karen. And we are live, just so you know.
No,
Yes.
that's not ours.
And
It's great to be with you. Thank you.
we've seen each other, what, 3-4 times
Yeah,
today? So
we have.
Sorry, yeah.
back and forth, I'm covering the big hall, and then
Yeah.
here.
It's been a long day, but a great day, hasn't
I know
it?
we're both tired,
Yeah.
but it's a good day. We're tired because we've been busy.
You've saved the best for last.
I like to believe that. Thank you for that. Give me $5 there.
Because we're switched on.
Oh yeah. And speaking of that, Switched On, by the way, for everyone to know, is your book.
Yeah, Switched On, the heart and mind of a special agent.
And that actually leads me to my first question. For those who may not be, I know you've been on Fox News and some of the other news media, the cable news networks, but for those who may not have seen you, who may not have heard of you,
Sure, yeah.
who is, I know you're a twin,
Yeah.
so I do want to get that in, and that's something unique in and of itself.
Yeah,
But let's start with, who is Eric Karen?
Yeah, thank you. So, I am one of 7 children. And my dad was a shoe shine boy in the 1940s. And he went to work at 8 years old. And his mom, he lost his dad young and to a heart disease. And he had to go to work at 8 years old. And he did that for a bunch of years, and then he joined the Marine Corps. And he went on. I'm sorry.
Hoorah.
Yes, sir. And it's funny. I never joined the Marines, although I'm sure my dad probably wanted me to. But I'd like to think, as a son of a Marine Corps soldier, once I was a Marine by way of him, right?
Okay.
So, he's a Marine, came back from Korea, and had 7 kids. I'm one of 7. Had a twin brother, and he taught me early on in life what it means to be switched on.
And now you brought that up again, and I want to address that. And I do want to talk about your work as a special agent.
Yeah.
And just some of the places you've been all over the
Yes,
world,
sir.
which is an application, I believe, of the thought of the switched on.
Right.
But obviously, we first have to define what is switched on. What do you mean by that when you're saying that?
So switched on is seeing where you're going in life, even in darkness.
Now, when we said that earlier, and I know you mentioned it to me, a lot of people are going to think instantly, the first thing that comes to their mind, well, dark as in dark night, light is out, but there's a little bit more to it.
Absolutely.
I mean, more than just the physical.
Absolutely. Mental as well. When we're in darkness over a death of a loved one, we're in darkness over the struggles of life, we need to be switched on. Or you could get to that dark side and stay there. And as well as our security, we need to be switched on. And again, knowing where you're going, even in darkness. If you're switched on, you'll be able to escape a problem. And so I've learned the basic principles of being switched on. There's 3 of them that we all need, because it's like a tripod, balance. So may I share the 3 principles with you? So the first one is strengthen the mind through education. It's your ticket to life's party. So you need to strengthen that mind. We all do. Strengthen the soul through faith. You're going to need it on those dark days of life, when evil is all around us and despair is all around us. You better strengthen the soul through faith. You're going to need it. And strengthen the body through the C philosophy: sleep, eat, and exercise. And with those 3 principles, it helps form the foundation of being switched on. Everything else stems from that foundation. Just like a home, you need that foundation to be solid. So with those 3 principles, then you exercise the mind, because it's the most important muscle. I know it's not technically a muscle, but I refer to it as a muscle, your brain. So it's not a punch, it's not your biceps, triceps, it's not your front kick. It's exercising here, your mind. And everything stems from the mind. So if you train the mind, the body will follow. If you don't train the mind, you die, potentially.
Now let's talk about, and I agree, absolutely, especially in the mind. I think too many of our youth, actually most people, don't think of it in that sense of how important it is to think through things, to strategize. A lot of people haven't been in situations in their day-to-day lives, and thank goodness for this, that they've never had to deal with some of the anxieties that are out there. I've lived in Moscow and went through the coup attempt. I was in Tbilisi. I went through the Civil War there. I was in California during one of the earthquakes, which is very much along the lines of what you've gone through.
Yeah.
You've been fighting terrorism.
Yeah.
You've been around the world.
Afghanistan.
Tell me, when you've been applying that switched on way of life, where are some of the places where that has been critical, that application?
Yeah, I served in the Middle East. I was in Dubai and Afghanistan, and you're always, as an agent, you always are reading people, right? Friend or foe, and that's the thing we don't know. Locally, in our personal life, in our president as well, always assessing the situation, always assessing a person. Especially if someone we don't know that stops you on the street. Is he a friend or is he a foe?
Especially in a foreign name, relation, where you don't have a lot of things that may key off because you speak the same language, or because we know people in the South or in the North or California, we know how they're going to generally ask. So
Identifying potential problems sooner rather than later is key. If you're switched on. Because if you're not switched on, you're going to be oblivious. Yeah, you're going to get hurt. And so you want to identify a potential issue, problem, avoid it, escape. And if you fail to avoid and escape, you might have to fight. And I just talked briefly about a strike to the computer. If you had to fight on the street and escape, fight and escape, fight and escape. It's a last resort, and you hope you never have to. But as you know and I know, there are bad guys out there.
Yes, there are.
Some women, but mostly bad guys.
Generally, if we're talking the average.
That's right.
It seems like,
So And the number one technique that bad guys use into you, into me, is this.
Just how they're speaking to you.
Chatting you up. So what the chat does to you is distract you. Like a good salesman.
Yeah.
And so most attacks, pick up a newspaper today, tomorrow, next week, most attacks on the street, prior to the attack, is a person stopping the person, stops you, that's number one, engages in conversation,
Holds you in place now.
and then attacks.
And we can see how that happens with many of the IED bombings or the suicide bombers in many parts of the world.
Yes.
Where it's because they're stopping the crowd, they're engaging with people,
Yes.
or causing a scene, which people will then turn, stop, come look at. Yeah.
They win your trust.
Yeah.
And and so, people say, well, I don't want to live in fear. And I'm here to say, I'm here to give you empowerment. I want to empower you with the book Switched On, The Heart and Mind of a Special Agent. I want you to go out and enjoy your life, but to be safe. And too many people become victims when they don't have to.
And we see them. Yes.
And so I just think that it's important that we all understand that there are criminals out there who will prey on soft targets. They don't want to get caught. So what I tell kids and adults, we have a room of 10 people. Harden yourself. How do you harden yourself? Because the bad guy, he's looking for a soft target.
That brings up a very interesting thought I want to ask about. But first, I want to see your book. I want to show everybody just to make sure we got that on camera for everyone. So, and they can get a copy of this.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to be reviewing it as well, so you can look for that.
I'm going to give you a signed
folks.
copy. That's not signed.
Yeah.
I'm going to sign it for you.
I like that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
But you've mentioned something that, and I've been mentioning it today a couple of times, and it's because it's very true. I'm a very big advocate of the Second Amendment, and I think it's one of the key things, not only for our freedom, but for protecting ourselves. And you're mentioning that same theme of being able to protect ourselves. In the case of, let's say, a mass shooting.
Yeah.
And one of the first things, I know everyone says we may have a discussion about whether we should or shouldn't have the gun, but I think in looking and applying what you're saying about being switched on, to harden the target, to be aware that something may be happening in that environment, whether it's a school or otherwise, and be prepared. And that's the first thing, because usually in these mass shootings, we find people are so disoriented. That first minute is the most deadly, when no one knows what's going on.
That's right.
No one knows who to look at. Is that one of the things that motivated you in writing the book?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book. The other reason I wrote it was to give people out on the street a glimpse of what it's like to be a law enforcement officer. What is it like to be an agent? The true story, the good and the bad. And it's challenging. I mean, you're working 24 hours a day some days on cases, and then you got to go home and
that's got to be hard for the family life.
See the wife and kids, and maybe you're involved in a child porn operation.
That's got to be devastating too. And I know you've done work like
yes.
that.
Yeah.
How do you? We've got to ask. How, when you come home? I mean, it's hard to. We all try to separate work from family life, but almost always we carry a little bit of that over.
Yes.
When you're dealing with something like that, so sensitive.
Yes.
How do you and how does your family?
It's tough. You know what? You need a good stable home life, a good partner, a good and again, you need faith. You need to know when to shut it off and not be switched on, because it's just not practical to always be switched on, right? And so we need quiet time, if you will,
downtime of some sort.
And it could be it could be going on a hike, be going on a boat. I got to get away, and I've done it. I go away for days and just, escape, if you will, from all that I've experienced in my life. And it's important to recharge our batteries. And so I've done that. But it's about balance.
That's what the book is.
Yeah.
Balance of the good days, and you've got it right, and the days where not quite so much.
I share that.
Book.
It is. I mean, I talk about my own struggles with PTSD.
That's a big, that's a, it's, I have to commend you because it's a very difficult thing to talk about. Yeah. My father, a Vietnam vet, couldn't talk with me, and I'm a Marine as well, and we couldn't have that conversation. It was too much for him. And I know many other vets who are friends of mine from over and just in those recent incursions, and sometimes they can't. So I want to commend you for that. I know it's a
thank you.
thing.
It is. It was, but I did it not just for myself because it was a little self-help for me. Because I tell you, it was some painful days writing this book. Sitting down at the computer, reliving, a case I was involved in where the undercover agent got shot and paralyzed. Reliving some other dangerous cases that I was involved in. And the frustration of prosecuting cases where bad guys are not prosecuted, and you know that this is a bad guy. You've chased him for a year. You've built a case, only to be told that you need more evidence, and we're not going to prosecute. But I've been chasing this guy for a year. I've missed birthday parties. I've missed my kids' parties and birthdays and etc. Weddings. And that frustration builds. And so, the number one cause of death for law enforcement officers in America, you know what it is?
No. Heart attack?
Suicide.
Yes, that's right. I have seen that stat once before, yes.
The number one cause of death in America for law enforcement officers is because we're giving them shiny uniforms and shiny cars, but we're not preparing their minds and their souls properly, and we're not giving them the help they need. Any local police department here in Maryland or DC, do they have a 24-hour wellness program where they can get a hold of a psychiatrist, a psychologist? Do they have a nutritional program where, hey, I'm gonna get a nutritionist in here to teach us how to eat properly? No. I mean, how about the family? How about the partner? Because that partner is the person more likely than anybody to see issues.
Front line for that.
But are there any services for that partner? Very little. So law enforcement officers need our help, and they're suffering. Because just think about this for a second. They're willing to die for you and for me, for people they don't even know. They're going to risk their lives, and some do, and get killed because they take an oath to serve their country and protect its citizens. They die for you and me. We better pony up some money and provide them the best services to protect their minds, because we're not doing that.
Well, then I have to ask you, and I hope it's happened, but I want to make sure. Because CPAC, we've had so many. I've seen Representative Lauderman, Representative Jim Jordan was here. We've had just a dozen or two of the representatives here, and they have you had a chance to speak with them to encourage them to think of that aspect of being able to improve the quality of lives for our law enforcement, for their families, and how has their response been to you?
Well, it's a good question. I know I'm associated with an organization called Blue Health.
Blue Health, okay.
And unfortunately they track every day suicides. I mean, this is you can Google it right now, but I think the number is probably around 39, 40 deaths already this year.
That's too high. Because it's not necessary. People can get help, and I do want to mention, please look for help.
Yes.
Reach out.
You don't struggle in silence. I mean, I did. I struggled and didn't get the help I needed. But with my family around me and God, I was able to come back.
And that's important.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here.
Yeah.
To reach out and make sure people know that they can. And the book goes into that.
It does.
And addresses some of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing because we don't hear it enough. We
Yeah.
don't hear someone explaining, here's the reality. And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most important things. To know this is real. It's not a movie. It's not for politics. This is life.
Yeah.
And we can help each other with that, especially those on the front line.
That's right.
That need it so much.
That's right. And and too many officers go to the dark side, local, state, feds. And I think if we had the services, we would have caught corruption. How the stress level that they're going through every day is tremendous. So when they stop your mother, your father, they're ready to go, and they need. I think if we had better services provided to them, they'll be able to. The quality of service to the general public will increase that much better, if you know what I mean.
Right.
But they're so stressed out for the most part, overworked, underpaid, that they just want to make it through the 8-hour shift.
Right. And just get done.
And get home. Chicago alone,
Worst city.
July from 16, 17, 18, over 2,000 deaths that we know of. 2,000 just in Chicago. And imagine being a police officer there every night. Every night. I'm once an agent, always an agent.
Yeah.
So I'll listen to Chicago PD. And it's shots fired. Shots fired.
They've already done, I believe the number was over 187 shootings, and this is 2 weeks old by Chicago Tribune, who keep a track of this weekly.
Yeah.
I believe it was 2 weeks ago. We were at 187 shootings with, I believe it was 25 murders so far this year, and this isn't a slow year. And it's not even a peak year. It's like this is an average year, which is incredible stress.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why we need to address this.
We do. And the service that they will provide will be that much better if we give them the tools they need in their tool belt to protect us.
I want to mention, and we only have a couple of minutes, about 4 minutes, but I do want to mention, so you mentioned the Blue Help, and for those who are looking at this maybe because they have family members or themselves that are interested in it, where is it bluehelp.com?
Yeah, bluehelp.com, and they help train police departments around the country. They provide them the tools and training for the police departments. They're doing conferences here in Washington as well, and in Chicago. I'm helping sponsor that, one of the conferences in Chicago. And it's a great organization, and they're trying to get the law enforcement memorial in Washington to recognize these officers' names on the wall, because right now those officers are forgotten. And so they're advocates for not just for law enforcement, men and women in blue, but for the family. They're there for the wives to pick up the pieces when their husband puts a bullet in their head.
Take care of what I like to call the law enforcement community.
Yes.
All aspects.
Yes.
From beginning to end.
Yes.
And I think that's incredible. I'm glad that we can mention this for the group and that people know that they can reach out to that.
Yeah, reach out to Blue Help.
And I do want to mention again about your book.
Yes.
And again, I'm going to show it again. I want to make sure people see it again, just to make sure that you guys can see it there, so you know what to look for.
Thank you.
It never hurts to say.
Yeah, thank you.
Take a look at it, because I think everything we've talked about are important things, whether you're in law enforcement, know someone, or just in your own personal life.
Yes.
You never know when knowing how to switch on and knowing when to switch off.
Yes.
Just knowing that can sometimes help a lot of people.
It does.
And I want to look forward to, I want to follow up with you.
Thank you.
After CPAC, let's go a couple months
definitely.
and see how, especially what's going on in Chicago, because I don't think it gets reported enough. We just don't hear about it. People have gotten so used to it.
That's right.
That no one's paying attention. Let's change that.
I agree.
Because making people more aware.
It's unacceptable.
Yeah. And the more we make people aware, the better it is for everyone.
Yeah.
Because when you put the spotlight on something, when you're switched on,
Yep.
you can address the problem.
Absolutely.
If you're in the dark, you can't.
There you go. Amen. Appreciate
But
it.
I do want to also mention, is there anything else, like a minute or so?
Yeah.
Anything else I can mention?
You know, I have a website called Switched On Life. Switched On Life. And not only can you buy the book, but there's good information that's available free of charge about how to stay safe, how to protect our children, how to protect our children from predators, how to protect ourselves when we're out and about as well. So there's a lot of good information on the website too.
Good life lessons, good lessons, just to
Tips.
Tips to help us all out.
That's right.
That's a great thing. So I'm glad we can include that as well. Eric, Karen.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I love our law enforcement. I love people who've gone on the line and stood up for us all, and I appreciate and I thank you for that.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
Thank you for making awareness about this very important issue.
Thank you for having me.
And folks, we're actually just finishing up. That's actually our last conversation, the last person we were talking to today, and obviously we're going to be here throughout all of. All right, no, lost almost everyone for a second. We're going to be talking.